Hello, my name is Alexa Duncan. I am a librarian in Buncombe County, North Carolina. Buncombe County Public Libraries are offering several training videos about computer basics. This is our second session, Introduction to the Internet. If you haven't seen our first session, Getting to Know Your Computer, you may want to go back and view that session first before coming to watch this video. All right, let's get started. So let's start by asking the question, what is the internet? So the internet is not any one particular place or any one thing that your computer and other devices look at. When we talk about the internet, what we mean is that it is an interconnected network of computers and other devices that share information. So you can kind of see from those words interconnected network where we get the term internet. So when we're talking about the internet, we're not talking about any one of those things. We're talking about the sum total of all of those connections. And they might be between your personal computer, a business or the government's servers, people's smartphones and cell phones, GPS units, smartwatches, personal fitness trackers, and even now some home appliances are internet enabled. So the internet is the connections between all of those different things. So you might also hear some other terms for the internet. You might hear it called the World Wide Web, or just the web for short. You might hear it called the net, which is short for internet, or you might hear it referred to as online, of being online. So I'm going to go back to that term web. Why do we call it the web? Well, part of why we call it the web is because that's a good way to visualize the internet. It's not something that connects to one place. It's all kinds of things connected to each other in the way that a web is, kind of like we're seeing in this illustration that goes along with this slide. So again, the internet is not one thing or one place. It's when we talk about the internet, we're talking about those connections between devices. So let's talk about how we connect to the internet. And the way that we connect to the internet is usually we open up our computer or our smartphone, and we connect to the internet through programs or applications called web browsers. So I have some of the most popular web browsers listed here. You'll see Google Chrome, and then either Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge, Mozilla Firefox, and Safari, which shows up only on Apple products. So if you don't have an Apple product, you probably won't see Safari. So most computers and internet connected devices have at least one of these on their desktop or on that main screen. And these programs are the ones that help us interact with websites and other internet users. We're going to talk in a little bit specifically about what websites are. So let's talk a little bit about websites and what that term website means. So we just talked about web browsers. So web browsers, those programs, those applications, help you visit specific websites. So what is a website? So a website is a specific place or site on the internet, and we know from earlier that another word for internet is web. And that specific place on the internet is designed by the people who own the rights to that website's name and address on the internet. So for example, the grocery store chain Ingles has a website named www.ingles-markets.com. So that website belongs to that grocery store chain, and that company, Ingles, decides how the page is going to look and what kind of information is going to be on the page. That's the same for a big website, a website owned by a big company like Ingles or Yahoo, which you see on your right here, or a small website that maybe is owned by a local business or a particular individual. Whoever owns the rights to that website decides what is going to show up on there. So now you may also hear the term homepage when people are talking about websites. That is the very first site that shows up whenever you open your web browser program. So very often, that very first page that will open up will be something called a search engine. Yahoo, which I have a screenshot of over here, is an example of a search engine. So is Google, and we'll talk a little more about that in just a moment. But just remember that home page is whatever the first page is that opens up whenever you open that web browser program. So there are two main ways to find websites on the internet. So sometimes you already know the address of where you want to go. For example, I just happen to know that the address for the website for the Asheville Citizen-Times is citizen-times.com. And so if I know that, I can type it directly into the address bar, which is this top bar on our web browser. So let's see an example of that in action. Here we go. I'm going to type in www.buncombecounty.org, and then I'll hit my enter key, and it will take me to that website. And you can see that it took just a moment to load, but now that website has come up directly. So now let's talk about the different parts of a website's address. I have that kind of blown up here at the top, that same web address that we just went to, which was buncombecounty.org. So first of all, when you look at a website address, the first part you're going to see is part that says either HTTP or HTTPS, and then a colon and 2 slashes. So that's sort of an automatic part of the website address that you don't necessarily have to type in. The next part that you're going to see is www. That stands for World Wide Web, which we talked about earlier is another word for the internet. Sometimes you have to type that in, but not always. More and more nowadays, you can skip typing in that part and your web browser will insert it for you. So the next part is the most important part. That's the page name. So in this example, that page name is Buncombe County. And so you also will notice that unlike when we're typing that normally, there are no spaces between the words Buncombe and county. Oftentimes in website addresses, you'll use a dot in order to differentiate different parts of the address. And you won't put a space in between words. Usually what people will do if they want it to look like there's a space is they'll put in a dash or an underscore instead. But for the most part in website addresses, all words just sort of run together like that. Then that last part is the domain. You don't have to remember that this is what it's called, but that last part, the domain, which in this case is .org, tells you what type of business or organization the website belongs to. So a pretty common one that you'll see is .com. That usually means that the place that you've gone to is a business. It stands for commercial. You might also see .gov, which tells you that the website that you're at is a government website. You'll also see .org. That one could be either a government website, such as Buncombe County's website being buncombecounty.org, or it could be a nonprofit. And then the last most common one is .edu, which is for a school or a university usually. And so you'll see some other types of domain names, but these are some of the most common and popular ones. So I said earlier that there are two ways to find a website that you need on the internet. We just talked about what to do if you know the address, how you can get there directly, but a lot of times we don't know exactly what that website address is. And so if we don't know what that website address is, we can use a search engine. Okay, so here we go. What is a search engine? So a search engine is a particular website that you go to, and it helps you search for other websites and information on the internet. So here I have an example, a screenshot of Google, but you might also go to Bing or Yahoo or many other different kinds of search engines. Google tends to be the most popular one. In fact, we've even incorporated that into our language. Now we'll say, instead of saying, oh, I'll go look that up on the internet, we say, oh, I'll go Google that. So I like to compare using a search engine to calling 411 to ask for a phone number. So if you already know a phone number, you can dial it directly. Just like if you already know a website's address, you can type it in directly. But if you don't know the address of a website, you can use a search engine to find out. Okay, so let's see an example of our search engine in action. Here we go. I'm going to type in Blue Ridge. Oh, and there is my top option is what I'm looking for, Blue Ridge Parkway. And so you can see when I searched, it didn't take me directly to a website. It took me to a page of results, which is telling me all of these options that I have for different websites that we can go to. And as I move down the page, you'll see more and more options. So let's talk a little bit about how we search for things on a search engine. So the first thing that you want to remember is try to keep it simple. You don't need to type out a whole question. For example, if I was trying to find out what parts of the Blue Ridge Parkway are closed, I wouldn't need to type out that full sentence, what parts of the Blue Ridge Parkway are closed. I could just pick keywords or phrases to look for. So I might look for Blue Ridge Parkway and I might look for closed. If what you're looking for to begin with doesn't turn up the kinds of results that you're looking for, you can try different words. So, if I were doing that same kind of search, I could, in that first search term wasn't working for me, I could try maybe Blue Ridge Parkway seasonal schedule or something like that. So you have to play around with it and try different keywords sometimes to get to the right thing that you're looking for. And then finally, you saw an example of this on the last page where I was just showing you how to look something up using your search engine, is that Google and most other search engines will start to offer you suggestions as you're typing. So you can see here in this example where I've started just typing blue, and it's giving me all kinds of suggestions: Blue Apron, Blue Ridge Parkway, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and you can click on the one that fits. So sometimes you don't have to type out your whole search term. You'll start to type out part of it, and then Google will supply the rest. So let's talk a little bit more about that page of results that we got. So each of these entries has a few different components to it. So the very first one is there's a title. And that's the very first line in each of these results that we have here. You can see that's the one that's in sort of a bluish purple color. And you can click directly on that to go to that particular website. So right underneath that in green, you'll see the URL. You don't need to remember the term URL. Just know that that's the website. That's the website address. And one of the neat things that you can do since it shows you that, is you can kind of take a look at what kind of website it is. Like for example, our first result here is BlueRidgeHeritage.com. So we know, okay, that belongs to a commercial business. The next one is BlueRidgeParkway.org. So we know that one belongs to a nonprofit. And since we know that the Blue Ridge Parkway is not necessarily a business, maybe we want to look at that second one that's a nonprofit. But then again, if we look down a little bit further, we can see that website is nps.gov, and then it continues on from there. And we know that the Blue Ridge Parkway is administered by the U.S. National Park Service, which is a government organization. So that might actually be the website that we want to go to because it's the one that the Blue Ridge Parkway is actually administered by. And so then beneath that, you'll see there is a snippet. And so what the snippet is it tells you a little bit about the web page. Usually it's pulling that text directly from the website itself, but it kind of gives you a window into what kind of information is on that website and helps you decide which of these different results you want to look at. One thing that I also like to point out to people is that there are ads in these search results. So if you look up at this very top result that says Drive the Blue Ridge Parkway, you'll see next to the URL, the website address, that there is a box around the word ad. So there's nothing wrong with clicking on that top result that says ad. Just be aware that that's what it is. That particular website has paid to have themselves placed at the top of that list. So it may still be the place that you want to go, but you also may want to look a little bit further down the page to make sure that that's the one that you want. And then if you continue to scroll down that page, eventually you'll reach the bottom of it. And you can see in this result, in this example with Google, the way that Google shows you that there are more pages for you to look at, more pages of results for you to look at, is they have additional O's in that word Google. And so if what you're looking for isn't on that first page, you can go to the next page of results. In general, I recommend that if the thing that you're looking for doesn't show up within the first few pages of results, you may want to try some different keywords and search terms. All right, so hooray, we found the website. Now what do we do? Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is you want to look for ways to interact with the page. And one of the main ways that you interact with the page is to look for hyperlinks, which we also just generally call links, which will help you move around the website. So a hyperlink can be either a word or a group of words, or it can be an image. And what happens when you click on a hyperlink is it helps you jump to a new section or a new page, so that you can get more information. So how do you tell which thing is a hyperlink? Well, so sometimes a hyperlink might be a different color than the text surrounding it. It might be underlined, but one way you can always tell for sure is you can move your mouse pointer over different parts of the page. And when it turns into that hand with a pointing finger image, that's when you know it's something you can interact with, and that means it's a link that you can click on. So let's see an example of that in action. Okay, so right here you can see I'm moving my mouse around and it's a pointer, and then so all of these things that I'm moving my mouse over, because it has the shape of that pointing finger, are links. And you can see when I'm not on them, it is an arrow. And so you saw before that sometimes it can be pictures. Down here, it's words. And so let's click on one of these. And so you see I clicked on that link and it took me to this page. Oop, took just a second to load there. And then you can also see different things on the page are links in addition. See how that turned into a pointing finger? Even this author of the article's name is a link. So if we click on that, it takes us to a page, and this has a list of all of the stories that she's written recently. So we can see those there. So these links really can take us to a lot of very different useful things. Okay, so if we're looking in the top left-hand corner of our web browser's page, you're going to see some navigation tools. So the very first one that you're going to see is this arrow that's pointing left. What that arrow will do is it will take you back to a previous page that you visited. So let's say we're on this current buncombecounty.org page, but before that we were on the Citizen Times. I could use that back arrow to go back from buncombecounty.org to the Citizen Times. To the right of that, you see that right pointing arrow. That one will move you forward. So if you say went back too far and you say, oh, I didn't mean to click it that many times, you could click that forward arrow and it would take you forward again. That third one is that circled arrow. What that is it's a refresh button. And so what that does is it reloads the page. A lot of times you don't necessarily need to do that, but if you're looking at a page that you're expecting to change or that it has a lot of information that's constantly updating, that's a situation where you may want to hit that refresh button. Or if you're trying to load something and it's just not turning up, it doesn't look right, you can try hitting the refresh button then. All right, so one of the last things that I want to talk to you about is searching within a website. So when you're in a website, you want to look for maybe a menu, a table of contents, or a search box. Those are all ways that you can look at different parts of the website. And what you want to do to try to find a search box is to look for either the word search or this magnifying glass symbol. So on the left here, I have a screenshot of the Weather Channel's page, and you can see where I have that magnifying glass symbol circled, as well as the field where you can type in what you're looking for. Okay, let's see an example of that in action. So here we go. You can see up here, there is the search box. I'm going to type in Hendersonville, North Carolina, and see it gives me some options I can pick from. So I'm going to pick Hendersonville, North Carolina. And once I click on that, it loads my results for Hendersonville. So sometimes it takes a second, so we'll scroll down the page just a little bit so you can see. It looks like I can also search for a zip code up there. So let me search for 28801. And you can see it's giving me lots of options. That top one I want is definitely the one that we're looking for, Asheville. So I'll click on that. And you can see we did that search and it came up with the weather page for Asheville. We hope this program about how to use the internet on your computer or other digital device has been helpful to you. For more information about Buncombe County's resources and services, please visit www.buncombecounty.org/library.